Brynne, have you seen Steel Magnolias?
Oh my god, yes, I love that movie.
Jonsey, you've seen it, right?
Hey, Tony.
Yeah.
You've seen Dracula, right?
Oh, I love that movie. It's so good.
Lena, you've seen it. What do you think?
Filmspringa!
Hey, Brynne, have you seen Weekend at Bernie's?
Oh my god, Weekend at Bernie's saved my life.
Jonsey, you have to have seen it.
Oh my god, no, I haven't. Of course not. You've seen Nightmare on Elm Street. It's the best.
That movie scared the out of me when I was a
You know,
kid.
did it scare the out of you? I have not seen that one, and I will be praying for all of your souls.
It's your Filmspringa, Lena.
Hasn't seen it.
It's showtime!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Filmspringa, the podcast about the podcast about all of your favorite films and your sheltered friends who's never seen them. I am Tony and I'm here with
Brynne, I'm also here.
and our sheltered friend.
Hi, I'm Lena, the sheltered friend.
Yes. So this week we took a little turn. We went for a cinematic masterpiece. It is the 1974 American neo-noir mystery film, Chinatown. Yes,
Heavy.
China. This is a heavy film. If you have not seen it, there's a lot on this film that I read up on, and I didn't realize the significance of this film until researching it. Because I hadn't watched it in a really long time, so I'm really curious to think what Jonsey thinks about this film,
very curious about
which we
this.
will get to.
Yeah.
But before that, to get everybody in the mood for this film, let's watch a bit of the trailer of Chinatown.
Just a bit.
Just a bit.
Producer Rob.
Can we?
Los Angeles, 1937. There are lots of guys like J.J. Gitters. They're easy to find, if you want to find them.
Mr. Gitters, have we ever met?
Well, no,
Never.
never.
Since you agree with me that we've never met before, you must also agree with me that I've never hired you to do anything, certainly not spy on my husband. I don't get tough with anyone, Mr. Gitters. My lawyer does.
You do your job. And sometimes you find the answers to questions that should never be asked. Or you find out what happens to people who ask them.
Hold it there, kitty cat. You're a very nosy fellow, kitty cat, huh? You know what happens to nosy fellows?
I dislike the word cheat.
Did you have affairs?
Mr. Gitters,
Did he know about it? Where were you when your husband died? You were seeing someone too. For very long?
I don't see anyone for very long, Mr. Gitters. It's difficult for me.
Mr. Giddens, you're dealing with a disturbed woman who just lost her husband. I don't want her taken advantage of.
All right, there's like another minute of that trailer,
Yeah,
so we're not
it's
going to
too
make you suffer through it. We're going to get into this film. So first off, Brynne, do you want to give us a little rundown of the plot, or do you want me to? What do you think? It's a very, very complicated plot.
Oophorectomy. I will give this my best shot.
Okay, if you need help, I'll jump in.
So we've got slick talking, but really not so slick talking, kind of dense Jake Gitters. And he is an old-timey PI, a private dick, if you would. And he is just private dicking it around Hollywood and Los Angeles, as you do. And he gets ensnared in a plot regarding the most boring thing on earth, waterways.
Yeah.
Water. the exotic sexy beast known as public
Awa.
reservoir water systems. And he gets involved with a Faye Dunaway, and she's got eyebrows.
Very thin eyebrows.
Very little on theme eyebrows. And there's something wacky going on with there and the water and her dad. And then the end's real depressing.
The end's real depressing. So
did I get that?
you did a decent job. Good job, Brynne. Good
Her
job.
husband is murdered.
Her husband
and
was, yes.
part of,
Faye
like,
Dunaway.
everything.
Evelyn. So Jake Gittes, when he's private dicking, gets dicked by a fake dick. And he dicks the wrong dick. And then it turns out he thought he was dicking Faye Dunaway's husband, but he was actually dicking a working girl's thing. And then Faye Dunaway is like, that's my husband. And then he gets involved with Faye Dunaway. Her dad is rich. He owns the water.
He was part of all of that. So it's mainly
my sister, my daughter, my sister, my daughter.
That part I totally forgot about watching.
I forgot. That was the one thing that I remembered from this movie was the twist. She's my sister, my daughter, my sister.
When it hit this time, I was like, oh shit, I don't remember this part. What the hell? So the movie is inspired by the actual California water wars that happened at the turn of the century in the early 1900s, like 1910, 1913, around there. But the film takes place in 1937, and it's very, when I was researching it, it's very 1937, not 36, not 38, very 1937.
Specifically.
Yeah. And this was kind of the catalyst that put Jack Nicholson as a bona fide movie star, Hollywood heavy hitter. Was this film.
Exactly. And the part of Jake Gittes was written specifically for him.
Yeah.
By Robert Towne, the screenwriter, who was his roommate for a little bit.
Yeah, and he won. Robert Townes won the Oscar for best screenplay, and a lot of people say that this is the best screenplay ever written, original screenplay that's ever been written. And in 1991, the film was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the United States National Film Registry, which I thought was cool, as being a culturally historical movie. Like it, they put it away.
I mean, because it is like very specific to California in 1937, which is that we were trying to steal water from people and
from the farmers, from the valley and all that,
orange groves, and it's very specific.
Very specific. But the other thing too, this film, when I was reading about it, because it came out in 1974. So it kind of was an end of an era in Hollywood after this film. Because after this film started the big budget, big Hollywood films with Jaws that came out, I want to say the next year, a couple years around the same time. And when Jaws came out, it was a different style film. It changed Hollywood to the modern, I guess you can say, Hollywood that we have now. So a lot of people, especially there's a book that that came out, and it's called The Biggest Goodbye, Chinatown in the Last Years of Hollywood, which is written by Sam Wason, I think is his last name. And he goes into how this film was the end of a Hollywood era and everything around it, and how it's all because of Jack Nicholson, Robert Townsend, and Roman Polanski.
Yeah, we're gonna have to address the pedophile in the room.
I know.
Is that this is a Roman Polanski directed, cameoed in movie. It's rough. It's his last movie on American soil, because he fled. Obviously, Roman Polanski has a huge storied history in the American movie genre, but also the American cultural cultural public because of Sharon Tate.
Yeah.
So
he's the wife of Sharon Tate.
Much talked about, much dissected. Person in Hollywood and in America's history. We don't condone any of
Not
that.
at all.
You know, there is a much bigger conversation to be had.
That is
and
a
I
whole
think that-
nother show
Yeah.
and podcast.
and a
Can
lot of people
I
are
just
having
interject and say, oh, fuck that guy.
yeah, fuck that guy.
Fuck
And
that
there
guy.
is a bigger conversation about how
Yeah.
much we can separate an artist from the art, and can you uphold a movie by a person that is very bad. And we're not going to have that conversation on this show, but it is a conversation worth having. We're
Yeah.
just talking about the movie.
The actual film,
Fun
yeah.
side note, I was almost in a Roman Polanski movie.
You were?
Mhm.
How? When? What movie?
So he was directing it. It was when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And he was directing it, but he wasn't
Regular.
in the United States. But they were filming in the United States. And my best friend in high school, her sister's an actress.
Yeah.
And she was in the movie. And she was like, Brynne, do you like want to play a little part in this movie? And I was like, oh my God, yes. And then I asked my dad, and he was like, fuck no.
Fuck no. What movie was it? Do you remember?
I can't even remember what
Was it
it's called.
Rosemary's Baby? No, I'm
It was not Rosemary's Baby. It was not alive.
That is
I'm not
a-
that old.
I know. It was a joke. Gosh.
I was originally supposed to be Rosemary's Baby, and then my
Baby.
dad was like, "No, yeah."
Also, good dad. Good
Good
dad.
dad.
yeah, good on my dad at the time.
I
hated it.
do love Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorite
So good. We
films.
should do
It's
that on the
so
podcast.
freaking good. Talk about scary. That movie creeped me the
That
fuck
movie's
out.
scary.
Just
That
a
movie
little
is as
tannis
scary.
root.
Yeah, that movie is as scary as this movie is as deeply depressing.
Yeah, oh, you could say that again. But yeah, this was like, I found it interesting. This is Jack Nicholson had a really heavy hand in this film since it was written for him, and he's in every shot, every scene of this movie he is in.
It is. I read something that was like, "This seems dumb to say, but we do not know anything in this movie that Jack Nicholson doesn't know."
Yeah,
The
and
movie is shot 100% from his eyes. We do
Mhm.
not have any information that Jack Nicholson's character is not privy to.
But that's a little bit kind of in the film noir style.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
like, I totally bought it. It didn't feel like it was overly so, in my opinion.
I didn't notice it until towards
Me
maybe the
neither.
middle end of the film. Was like, wait a minute, he's in everything in this film, and it's his point of view. And
I thought about it toward the end of the movie because he was like making a lot of assumptions, and I was
Mhm.
like, he's a dum-dum. And I know more than he does. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this whole movie is just, he's making these assumptions and actions are happening because of dumb things that he's doing because
yeah,
he's the only one with the information. And the only information we've got is what we've gleaned or remembered from seeing this way too young as a child.
way too young. But I
So
think it
let's
hit
get
me.
into that.
I think it hit me that it was all his point of view is in the scene when he goes to the landowners and they beat him up. And then you go to blackout because he
Yes.
passes out. And then when the movie starts up, it's when he wakes consciousness. So
Yeah,
it's like,
for a second, I thought something was wrong with my TV.
because it just goes,
It's like, wait, it just went
done.
black. I was like, oh no. Yeah.
Yeah, but the film, so you know, we talked about Faye Dunaway when we did our Mommy Dearest episode, and she was problematic in that film. So when I was doing research, the same things were coming up with Faye Dunaway in this film. But this is my opinion on it. I think this was in 1974, and it's weird because the male actors can have these attitudes.
Yep.
But the minute the female actor like Faye Dunaway stands up for herself, especially when Roman Polanski goes over to fix her hair and actually pulls a hair out because it was out of place, and she was like, "Don't you ever do that to me again," and stormed off the set. I'm like, good for her, because, and then Jack Nicholson was in an interview. They all, and Roman Polanski and Rob Townsend and other people were in an interview said that they just labeled her as crazy, as insane. And I'm like, that would not fly today. That would
She's a
not fly
lady.
today. Yeah.
This lady being a lady.
So that mentality.
Is she on her
of-
period?
Exactly.
exactly.
So that mentality, even in 1974, was it's just, I just felt bad for Faye Dunaway because I'm like, she can't get a break. I told her she was problematic in this
Also
one,
a
and-
Capricorn woman.
Yeah,
So,
so
I
strongly
understand.
opinionated.
I understand
I'm also
the
not
feeling.
shocked because I feel like, you know, we hear the horror stories about The Shining and how
Yeah.
that was. And like, obviously, Jack Nicholson was an advocate for Shelley,
Yeah.
poor girl. So like I feel like he's a little bit of that kind of like sucks to be you.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
he
he's
was in
definitely-
his prime, I would say, during that time. So even now, so male chauvinism is what it is, and that's what.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So I
Mhm.
found that part of it problematic when I was doing the research. I was just like, poor Faye Dunaway. Poor Miss
Faye
Faye.
But she was still great in this.
She was great
in
in this movie.
She was amazing.
And then in the scene towards the end when Jack Nicholson slaps her. So apparently during the filming of it, she got pissed at Jack Nicholson because he was like not really in, like not giving it 100%. And she yelled at him and said, just hit me. And so he did. But that scene was hard to watch. Watching it now, I was like, oh.
So hard to
yeah.
watch.
Yeah.
And also the scene where he's getting beat up by the farmers, it looks like he's really getting hit.
beat up. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's all out of breath. I was like, I bet you they're really beating him up right now.
I know, it sure felt like it. I was like, oh, I would have hit them all in the balls and grabbed those crutches
crazy.
and beat that guy. Oh,
You can't do that anymore.
no. So, Brynne, when was the very, very first, we're going to change gears. So, Brynne, when was the first time you saw this movie and how did it make you feel and what do you remember about it? And how is it watching it this time around so many years later? What?
In news surprising no one,
Yeah.
I saw this movie way too young.
How young?
I was in elementary school the first time I watched Chinatown.
Did you even
Sorry,
know what
say
it was about?
So
Elementary
here's
school,
the thing that
man.
I will say is that I did not, there's no way I could have known what it was
Yeah.
about. Like I, my parents were super into noir. They were super into not having kids bring them down into what movies they had to watch.
Yeah.
So they were like, we're getting Chinatown tonight.
You know what tonight's
sure
movie is, kids? Chinatown.
I'm sure at some point they were like, get out of here or
Yeah.
whatever. But no, I watched Chinatown when I was young and I loved noir, like even from
Yeah.
a very young age. Like I loved Hitchcock.
Mhm.
I, loved like Rebecca and all of those sorts of films. This is like a little bit, I mean, it's not true noir. It's like stylistically noir.
Yeah.
So, it's like a pseudo. And I obviously could not understand it, but I understood Faye Dunaway's eyebrows. And I had a visceral reaction when I rewatched it with the nose because I remember as a kid seeing that and
when he's-
freaking the
yeah, I
fuck out because it looked so good
bad.
and real. And
It just, I remember that. No.
but I remember like even as a kid being like a pretentious little like
Kid?
10-year-old 10-year-old like, yes, this is important. This is important.
God, I can't imagine. You're like over here. Well, how old were you? How old
I
were
was
you?
like probably like 10.
This 10-year-old probably quoting Chinatown. I mean, come on.
I used to say,
How do you
"Forget
like
it,
them
Jake."
apples?
I used to say, forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
Town.
All the time. All the time to people. Forget it, Jake. It's
Oh man.
Chinatown.
But the whole, and even with the title of the film Chinatown, it's like the bad, that's where you go to die pretty much. is
Yeah,
how
the
it-
bad part. And there's like a lot. I was reading a lot about like the inherent racism.
Oh, big time. Even in
Like-
this movie where they use racial slurs against
Yep.
Asian American people, I'm like,
And
oh man.
like the Asian, the minorities that do show up in the film are all in like the butler or the, all of
Mhm.
that. And then just saying like cops don't care what happens in Chinatown. You're like, such an
Exactly.
important piece of American cinema that's so deeply rooted in like anti-Asian sentiment.
I know.
And yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also,
Alright.
like, they're not sugarcoating what wasn't, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
It's
happened.
true. You kind
So
of
it's
got
a
a
lot better
real.
than, like, we did Breakfast at Tiffany's
Yeah.
where, well, that was offensive. And also just glossing over any kind of disparity. This
Where-
was at least attempting to portray something accurate.
Yeah, and I think that was a little more not tolerable, but I was like, okay, they're not making fun of because it felt like back then in 1930, 35, 36, 34, 7, sorry.
37.
37, that was the mentality. That's how people thought. And
it is like
man.
saying that like the cops are doing the bare minimum.
Oh, bare
It's like,
minimum.
cops are bad.
Yeah.
You can buy the police if
Yeah.
you're rich enough. And yeah.
But they took such a boring topic of water and
So
made
strange.
it interesting in a way, especially for a like detective.
Yeah, because Robert
of movie,
Towns,
yeah.
when he had turned down a bunch of money to adapt The Great Gatsby,
Yeah.
and instead decided that he was going to do this movie for less money.
For 25,000, I think.
Yeah.
It
And when he
was, I
wrote it,
believe.
he was like reading books about it. And he's like, here's a sexy topic.
Water. Stolen water.
But it's like the thing, because like the inherent unfairness of it and stuff like really resonates with people because you're like, oh, this actually did happen. And it is super unfair and stuff like this is still happening.
The thing that got me was the end of the film because they just get away with it. They get away with everything that Jack Nicholson's character was finding out and trying to stop. By the end of the film, it's like all that for nothing type of a thing with a very sad ending.
That also made me feel like it was much more kind of like the movies in modern times that we deem to be like successful and good movies, because they gave us that like, well, you didn't do, 1 + 1 = 2 kind of ending. Like, you gave us a switcheroo and that kind of thing. And
they didn't
like,
follow
The Departed comes to mind, where it's like you're not going to get what you want, and also it's not going to end pretty. It's gonna. So I thought this was very kind of like, oh, these are the themes of storytelling that just are always great, no matter what time you're in.
Yeah.
And that was not the original ending.
No, it was not. Because in the original ending, didn't he write that?
He wrote that Faye Dunaway fatally shoots her father.
Yes.
So he dies.
Oh,
But
I
she
would
goes
have liked that better.
And
she goes to
jail.
prison
Yeah.
forever because she refuses to tell anyone why she shot him, because she doesn't want her daughter to know, and she doesn't want everyone to know that her father raped her, and she doesn't want her daughter to know.
I would have liked that better because
She's her daughter, her sister, her daughter, her sister.
My sister.
And then she just goes to prison forever.
Yeah.
But then Roman Polanski was like, no, this is much more cinematic to sort of reinforce that the rich people
Get away with murder
whenever they want.
Yeah.
And there was also a scene in the original movie when they shot it that Robert Towns said that he was really upset that they cut, which is when Curly, in the beginning, the guy who gets the pictures.
Yeah.
Which, what a way to start a movie, right?
I know.
And Curly says, he tells Jake like that his plan is to kill his wife. And Jake says, you're not rich enough to get away with murder.
Yeah.
And then that's why they're having the conversation about money. And then they cut it. But he said Robert Towns said that more than anything else, he wished they had kept that in, because that is foreshadowing to the end of the movie, where if you are rich enough, you can get away with murder.
I wonder why they didn't keep that.
I think it was just for time or whatever, because like the original screenplay was like, it would have been 3 hours long.
Wow, because it already was clocking in at over 2 hours, like 2 hours and
so long.
Well, that's also really putting it up in the audience's face, where I feel like the rest of the movie was a little bit kind of like back a step. Like you had to look for that and then put the clues together yourself.
Yeah.
And then also like they worked you up to the point where it's like, oh, well, that's acceptable because this like spoiler rape incest kind of situation happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if you just started the movie with that, it would be, especially at that time, I think so overwhelmingly confronting that I don't know if they would have been able to keep some of the audience engaged to actually tell the story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do like this style of movie where you're getting the one viewpoint and you're trying to solve this crime along with the character.
It is very cool. It is very different from like, I don't know. We're getting deep into movie theory
I know.
now.
I know where you're going with this, Brynne, and I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Where like we've gotten so jaded with that, like trying to figure it out that like we need to feel so smart. We need to see it from 32 different angles.
Yeah.
We need to be a step ahead. We need to see this and that. We need freaking Knives Out, every point of view, everything we're looking. It's like a Sherlock Holmes thing. We think we're so smart.
Yeah.
Like everybody needs that now. Otherwise they're like, it's like too simple or whatever. But it was, in watching him, like we are figuring, we're not that smart. Ain't none of us that smart. Okay, we're figuring it along with him.
I kind of like the simplicity of in this movie, the storytelling, where it felt like it wasn't being put in your face and going, here's a clue, here's another one, look over here, look something shiny, look over here. It was like, here it is, you figure it out. I'm not going to tell you. And I kind of really miss that kind of film. And you don't see a whole lot of it much, especially with the big films that come out and stuff from Hollywood. No. So this was a nice refresher to that era of a Hollywood. I guess you can say instead of the big blockbuster film, it's that nice storyteller film.
Did you tell us when you first saw this?
When did you first?
Oh gosh, I saw this later. I saw this in my early 20s, like very early on, and I remember I got introduced to it from a friend of mine who was a huge movie buff, like movie buff, like really into cinema and film, and she showed it to me and was like, you have to watch this movie. It is on it's like a great film on the great, and I was like, okay, just let me get stoned and now watch it. And which was a bad idea back then because I had no idea what the fuck was happening in the film.
This is a movie you've got to pay attention to.
So the first time I remember watching it, the one thing I remember is the nose scene when he gets his nose chopped. I remember that stayed with me, and maybe it was because I was stoned, but I remember
I literally went like this right at the right moment.
Yeah.
So like I've seen everything around it, but I'm okay that I didn't.
I forgot that was coming again.
I did too.
And I showed it happening, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No. He had it at his face, and I went.
Nope.
And then it happened.
So when I first saw it, I thought it was. I was a little, so I remember I had to watch it again. Like, I think I watched it maybe a year later. And I remember really appreciating the film because I was like, oh, this is very well done. Like, the story was original and I appreciated it coming from one character point of view. And it just reminded me of those old detective books and films that I remember like even reading as a kid, and I'm not that old, but you know what I mean? And especially in like the Muppets, or when you're a kid, you always see them throw to that style of black and white detective, a private eye, right? So this film reminded me, I remember when I first saw it, I was like, that's where all those things come from, is this type of film and stuff. But then when I rewatched it, I hadn't seen it probably since my early 20s, so it's been a good maybe almost 20 years since I saw it. The same thing happened the first time I watched it. I was stoned by mistake.
Oh, by mistake?
How
did one become stoned by mistake?
I just got stoned and I didn't realize we had to watch the movie. And then we did.
You forgot that it was something you needed to actually pay attention to.
Yes, exactly. I thought I would be okay, but no. And then when I did get stoned and started watching a movie, I was like, oh shit, this is what happened last time.
Yeah.
So then I literally was like this watching the movie. Okay. Like just wide-eyed, really focusing as hard as I can on the Oh, and Rob and producer Rob was like, "You're an idiot."
Tony, much like the LA water wars,
Yes.
if you do not learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it.
Yep. So then I had to rewatch it again this week, and the second time I really appreciated it. That's when I started noticing all this stuff. But we are halfway through the show, so you know what time it's for. Since we hit the halfway mark, it is time for name drop.
Let's start. Dolly Parton. Rachel Maddow. I spend an hour with her every single day.
I once played a drinking game with
Celine Dion, Liza Minnelli. Cher. Laura Dern. I don't know her.
Who would you say is the most famous person in your phone?
My good friend Ben Affleck and his crippling addiction to back tattoos.
I have the best Lady Gaga story of all time.
Hate him, loathe her, over them, cancel it, tell me everything.
Yes, it is time for name drop. This is our version of 6 Degrees. And Brynne, who are the actors for this week's name drop?
That you will get.
I know you always get this segment. I think I got one. I got it one time.
I got one once.
So then me and Jonsey are tied. Then we're tied.
And one time nobody got it.
Nobody got it. We were like, "Hey, let us know."
But that's why we need you, audience members.
Yes, please. So we're going to do from this movie the lovely, the often maligned Faye Dunaway. Yeah. Hello, Capricorn. And from the next movie, we are going to do the Renaissance man, Kevin Kline.
Oh, I love Kevin Kline.
So Faye Dunaway to Kevin Kline. Let's see if we can, get that.
If we can figure it out. Kevin Kline's such a great actor. He's been in so many of my favorite films.
I love him
like,
so much.
Other than the show we did, Mommy Dearest, I don't know what else she's been in.
Bonnie and Clyde, hello.
Bonnie and Clyde.
I've never seen
Days of the Condor. Towering Inferno.
Towering Inferno, that's right.
Never seen it.
None of them?
No.
Network.
Add 'em to the list.
Oh, Network, right? She was Network.
She won the Oscar for that.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, that's right. I forgot.
This is why we do the show, guys.
This is why we do the show.
This is why we do it. So we will get back to name drop at the end of the episode. We'll see if any of us figured it out. So we'll revisit that. But did you know that there was a sequel to Chinatown? Did you guys know this in 1990? The Two Jacks. And this was written, it was starring Jack Nicholson again, and it was written and directed, I want to say, by Robert Towne, but it did.
But it was directed by Jack Nicholson.
Jack. Oh yeah, you're right. He also directed it, and it bombed.
Jakes.
It bombed so bad.
Who wants to watch a movie called about two guys named Jake called The Two Jakes?
No, thank you, ma'am. No, thank you.
It's like the original Dude, Where's My Car? No, thanks.
What do you mean the original? Was there a sequel?
Dude, Where's My Car? Just gotta
it's like the original iteration. Are you Jake? No, I'm Jake. Aren't you Jake? Jake who?
That's right. Right. Dude. All right. So Brynne and I gave our opinions of this movie that we have watched when we were younger and currently. But Jonsey, you have never seen or heard of this film ever until this week?
Yeah.
All right. So what did you think? First time watching it ever. Please. What did you think of this film?
The intro dragged.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm a modern day viewer. I did not appreciate the slow rollout.
You mean the opening credits or?
Yes, that too.
Oh, you mean the entire
the entire first half of the movie.
Got it. The first act. Okay. I hear you.
The first,
understandable.
Yeah, first act was just like, oh my God, I don't want to watch this.
Fun.
I'm not.
I'm being honest, guys.
But I'm not surprised.
And then, once Faye Dunaway got up in there and was doing all of her eyebrows, I was on board. It got better. I did like the mystery of it. I like the film noir, part of it. I really enjoyed how the story unfolded and they tied it all in, because I agree. I was really like, ugh, water, boring.
You're like, oh God.
Like, could not care less. Even though I'm like, no, I love the environment. I want to care. I still was like, I just can't. But overall, I cannot say I endorse watching this movie.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Because fuck the filmmaker. I don't think it was a good enough film that we should add it to the list. It doesn't need to be seen.
Are you being serious?
I disagree with you 100%. I think it needs to be
up,
seen.
in my opinion.
Wowzers.
I totally disagree with Jonesy on that. I think it's an important. I think it's an important film for the history of Hollywood and filmmaking. I really do.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what I think. If you watch Citizen Kane and can get why that's important, you can skip this one.
Two different eras, two different genres.
True.
Yeah, no, I disagree. No.
But again, I don't want to glorify this filmmaker.
So the main reason why you're not.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that. But the main reason you don't, is it because of the filmmaker, the director, we should say, or is it the story and the actual film?
It's two things. The filmmaker. So, okay, if we took that away, I still don't think it holds up over time.
Because of the subject matter?
I think that if you just showed it to audiences now, it's not necessary. I don't think it's necessary in film cinema history. I think there's other movies you could watch that can give you different parts of that. I think part of it didn't translate into modern and further going audiences. Like the beginning really did drag, and that's bad. I'm sorry if you can't catch an audience in the beginning and you're just saying no, stick with me for 45 minutes, trust me, it'll pay off.
Well, I also think that part of that
it's
is
not Die Hard.
I know, but part of it is the fact. Hold on. Part of it is the fact that audiences today have a much shorter attention span than in 1974 when this film came out.
I give you that.
So I think if you're watching it from that mindset, you're not going to like this film because you want instant gratification now instead of waiting for it.
There's other movies from the past that you can appreciate the time and how it built up, and they still build up at, like, I would say, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. Ready? Here, come at me. It's Gina Loans at Instagrams.
Don't do that to yourself.
I know. Star Wars.
I'm not even like, I feel like something's going on and you want to torpedo our podcast.
Yeah.
Nope.
And you want us, and you are on a real self-destructive path, and I don't want to go down with you.
Nope, me neither. One, I think you're having a moment, so you've just had it. But to talk blasphemy against Star Wars, no, thank you, ma'am. So now,
let me finish.
What?
Star Wars. If we put Star Wars in a modern audience without any context, I think they would say, "Oh, well, there's parts that drag." However, they would still be like, "It's a phenomenal story. I was engaged, and the parts that dragged, I am still I want to go through to find out the rest of the story." Okay. Do I think that of this film, where it's kind of that time frame of story making, where people are like, it's still worthy enough, where push through the 45 minutes. Do you understand what I'm saying? I didn't piss off the Star Wars guys.
So no.
Equivalency. It's not an action movie. It's not a saga. Yeah. It's a rope. It's a noir. It's a tight thread.
So it's what I'm hearing.
And those 45 minutes could have been 25.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, you don't like the writing and the way the film was made. Like that's what you're not liking of it.
Correct.
And you're entitled to your opinion. Hold on. You're entitled to your opinion.
100%. Producer 100% has told Tony and I not to bash you.
Yeah.
In unison for your opinion.
But then again,
part of this podcast is me having conflicting opinions from you guys.
Which is very interesting because you take people who grew up with film in their life as a strong component, Brynne and I, where film and filmmaking really shaped the way I do a lot of things. I was inspired a lot by
100%.
film. And then you
Yeah.
have somebody who didn't have that, who that wasn't an influence. So it's very interesting. And I'm sure the audience too, you're going to have people that film wasn't important to them in their life and growing up. And then you're going to have other ones who it was very important to them.
But Lena, you can't even see the merits of this as being an important component in American cinema. You're like, nah.
I think that I do, but I think that there are far other more important films
Like what?
in American cinema.
That you've seen.
Yeah.
Like
In
what?
5 films that you've seen in American cinema.
Fair enough, but also I never saw this film and I don't felt like I was lacking. I don't feel like this film gained me anything.
So
And
what would have
again, it's really hard. I'm sorry, I'll acknowledge it's really difficult for me to think this is a film worth seeing when we know about the filmmaker. I don't think this is a film worth seeing.
because of
I
the
think there are
filmmaker?
other huge parts of American cinema, like American Graffiti, Star Wars. I think, what was the other one I referenced just a bit ago?
But those are all different genres. It's not this genre of film and this type of filmmaking.
And I'm sure
So it's hard to say go watch Star Wars or go watch this in place of
you can't.
Chinatown. You can't. You just
Are you
can't
telling
do that.
me there's not other film noir films from this
I mean,
era? that
definitely, but not of this ilk of this era. Like
Yeah.
it is very. I
Okay,
don't
so-
even know what we would compare it to. I mean, like there's like Raging Bull or Taxi Driver, but they're not noirs. Like they're
Yeah.
the same sort of films that came out of importance during this era, during this.
So
sort of
I don't
genre
understand the
filmmaking.
importance. So explain to me the importance and why it was an impact at that time, because I still don't see it. And yes, I'm looking at it from a very naive,
Yeah.
backwards looking, or forward looking backwards and backwards a lot, like before I was born.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to comprehend. But like, also going back to the subject of our podcast, in the church, this kind of subject matter wasn't deemed important, wasn't deemed a part of life that was required. It was actually, if you had this kind of stuff in your life, that's what gave you conflict, gave you sin, invited the devil into your life. So you should live a life where none of this kind of stuff could enter it. Does that make sense? I sound
What would
stupid.
what would your parents
Yeah.
think
What would
about
your
this?
parents think about this?
I literally just said it. So basically, everyone involved in this movie was living in the detective trying to seek out affairs like that, as other people in the movie said, is a sinful, non-trustworthy, kind of debaucherous career.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And yet we know he has this past from when he was a cop and he tried to do the right thing in Chinatown, but we don't know everything. And but clearly Chinatown was like the not so great part of town. And like the church would all be about remove yourself from that entirely. Get out of the crummy part of town. Get out of that field of work.
How?
And if that's your only means, find other means. Like, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying that's what the church would say. I'm
They
not
would say
saying
that
that's
it's your
what I would
fault that
say.
you're living. But what
See,
about?
So back to the film, since we are talking about this film, I do strongly disagree with Jonsey in the fact that it's not that. I think it's an important film in film history for Hollywood. I really do think
so.
because it is the end of an era of a type of filmmaking where it was really about story and original screenplays. You moved into, after this film, this was one of the, if not the last film before Hollywood was taken over by the big budget blockbuster films.
Yes.
So
With
this
the
film
CGI
this film
Yes.
specifically, it was an end of an era in Hollywood. And I think it's important for history, especially within film, for people to watch this film and understand like this is one way Hollywood used to be. That
And
is
it's
no
so,
longer here.
just like such a slice of American movie making of like what America was doing at that time, how we were making movies, how we were integrating the history, and I don't know, so many classic like
How about
Your
them
mic.
apples? I didn't
How
know
about
that
them
came from
apples?
this movie.
how about them apples?
Yeah.
Forget
That was
it,
one
Jake.
of those where I was like, wait.
I
Yeah, I
knew
know.
I thought about you
I
when I
know. How about
rewatched
them
it. I
apples?
thought about you. I go, I bet you Lena is just now realizing that is how you like them
Not
apples
from
is where
Good Will
that's
Hunting?
from. Yep.
No.
And then like forget it, Jake. It's
Forget it, Jake.
Chinatown.
It's Chinatown.
Yeah.
I know.
Like, my sister, my daughter, my sister,
Sister,
my
my
daughter.
daughter, my
so
sister, my
here's-
daughter. What?
You
If I
probably
could
been-
just, in defense of myself, I don't know about this era of film that you speak of, so I can't.
You were right. You were right.
You're right. You didn't.
But-
Yeah, that's
You know
true.
what I mean? Like all of the movies you guys have listed as a reference, I'm just like, So,
Well, think of
so
it this
let me
way,
just be
Jonsey. Think of it
ignorant
this way. Before this film, before that, you had your musicals, your 1950s, 1960s, late 60s
very
film.
much.
And all of that changed after Chinatown because Jaws came out, right? Literally almost right afterward, and introduced the new era of Hollywood of the big budget blockbuster films, which you were not seeing before this. It was the biggest you would have had was the MGM musicals, which was a whole nother era of film. So I think maybe if you knew if you had like, let's say film history, right? And they went through the eras, and you can see, okay, before this film was made, the eras before it, like what kind of films were being made, and then transitioning into the late 70s, because at the same time Chinatown came out, it was 1974. Watergate was around the same time, and you had, was it one of the wars, or Vietnam War was around there too, or just coming out of it. So you had a very different America after this film was made, which introduced the whole new era of Hollywood. And I think that's why it's important.
My judgment isn't like overall time. I'm saying as of now, with no background, no history. And so therefore, does it hold up?
I mean, I guess you're right. That is in essence what we are asking you to do, is go in blind.
Yeah.
I guess we are just now discovering that on this podcast. Do you have an especial love for cinema, Lena?
I didn't realize how much of it I didn't know about.
That's the whole purpose of the show.
I had the reason why I got involved in theater was because of my love of cinema and theater and musicals and like just, TV as a performative thing. Like, I wanted to be on the Mickey Mouse Club forever. Like, so yes, I was aware of it. Here was my very contained bubble. I had no idea there was all this other stuff.
Right? And so that's the job of this podcast, because I'm sure you're not the only one that feels that way. So I'm glad we actually reviewed this film, because I'm hoping Jonsey can take away maybe just a little bit of like film history or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean?
And film theory.
But film theory. So I don't know. I think that's great. But it is time for Grace Get Me a Stinger. It's about that time.
Wait.
Oh, yeah.
3 measures of Gordon's, 1 of vodka, half a measure of quinoa lily. Shake it over ice and then add a thin slice of lemon peel.
It's going to be a
drink. I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another.
Grace, give me a stinger.
So this is a part of the show where we pick a cocktail and the little nibblies to pair with this film. And like Jonsey, I'm going like this. What are you gonna pair this with? Yeah. What would you do, Brynne, with
I would
this
do
film?
Tom Collins with a lemon, not lime.
Okay.
She
And
said
then-
that. Yes.
And then I would do fish.
Fish.
But I would do like
head on.
Not with the head on. I do like
The head on.
logs.
Yeah.
So that had a real fishy smell.
What would you do, Jonsey, for this one?
I think I would not eat and just have a cigarette or 5.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought of something better too.
What?
Unfiltered LA tap water.
Ah, there you go. Oh no. You know what I thought of this for some reason?
Runs. You want the run?
It's like a diet.
You know what I thought of it?
Diet.
I thought of a California burrito.
Yes. Love that.
And just a shot of tequila.
I'm into that. Yeah.
That's it. That's what this movie made me crave.
I like that.
So we're gonna revisit Name Drop. Did any of us figure out how to pair up Faye Dunaway and Kevin Kline?
I know her from 2 movies that we've done on this podcast.
I honestly, I tried before the show and I couldn't do it without looking it up. But Brynne, I know. I see.
You got this.
Go ahead.
So Faye Dunaway was in Bonnie and Clyde with Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty was in Bugsy with Annette Bening. Annette Bening was in the remake of The Women with Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan was in French Kiss with Kevin Kline.
I used to love French Kiss.
Oh, I
Do you
love
remember
French
that movie?
Kiss. I love that movie.
God.
Lena, have you seen French Kiss?
Seen it?
Never seen it.
Oh, it's a cute little rom-com from the 90s, right? It was the 90s?
It's the 90s. Yeah. It's so
when
cute.
she has a lactose intolerant. I've been in your shoes, Meg Ryan.
yeah.
I know how that feels. We should
fly,
put French Kiss. It's a cute movie. At least I thought it was a cute
Add it to the list.
Yeah. Okay, so what are we gonna do our grade? What did we grade this last time, Jonsey? Did you have it written down? Or
Yes,
anybody?
I do. Yes, I do. So both Brynne and Tony gave it a solid A.
Brynne, is that grade gonna change or stay the same for you this week?
I'm going to keep it as an A.
Okay, I could see
What
that.
about
Me
you,
too.
Tony?
I'm gonna
giving it
keep
an
it as an A. It deserves an A.
I think it's important. I think
I do
it's an A,
too.
yeah.
I think if you haven't seen it, go watch it. All you got to do is
Yes.
watch it one time. I'm curious.
If you love cinema and
Yeah.
movies, you should see this.
I'm curious for our audience members, for people who have never seen this movie, go watch it for the first time and let us know what you think. If you kind of agree with
Yes.
Jonsey, or
Yeah.
if you think you agree with Brynne and I. I'm very curious with this one, what our audience's opinions of
So
this film is.
that's the thing. My rating is going to be a solid B.
Mhm.
Okay.
So
can live with
yeah,
that.
I need other people who don't have a background on this film to let me know, what do you think? Am I crazy?
Yeah.
It's okay if I am. Just tell me. It's fine.
Because I am interested with people who are not film nerds like Brynne and I.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
There's just a circumference of like 30 films I'm a nerd about.
Yeah. So I'm really curious but you know what time it is? We're going to talk about the movie, or at least say our next movie, and let Jonsey guess what this film is about just based off of the title and the movie poster. And next week's film is a 1988 heist comedy, A Fish Called Wanda.
A Fish Called Wanda.
I know. I'm excited for this one. I
I'm
used to
so
love
excited to do this, especially after Chinatown.
Yeah, especially after Chinatown. So,
Yeah.
Jonsey, what do you think this film is about based off of the name and the title? And just a little history. Jonsey's heard of the name of this film because she's always asked, what is A Fish Called Wanda? And we've never told her. So, this is going to be really interesting. So, what do you think
That's
it's
right,
about,
guys.
Jonsey?
My ignorance is partially to blame from my loved ones.
Yeah, just a little.
So I very much remember this movie cover in the VHS Blockbuster and other non-name brand stores that you could rent movies, but it was rated R, so we could never even touch it. So I'm going to say it's a new comedy about sex, murder, and seafood, because that's what they said on the cover.
Poster.
Yeah, that's what it says in the poster.
I mean, they're in a lineup. I hope there's a mermaid, but I think there's probably not.
This isn't Splash. This isn't Splash.
We should do Splash.
She's seen Splash.
I have seen Splash.
Yes.
Loved
more than
it.
once.
But
Yeah.
scandalous.
Loved it. I want to. It's
Come on, you can do it.
a like rom-com, I think, but
Is
with
it
sex stuff?
sex stuff? Well, there you go. A rom-com with sex stuff. And it's about a mermaid, apparently.
Yep, a mermaid rom-com with sex stuff.
Yeah.
So Splash.
So Splash. Which I love, Daryl Hannah.
Part 2. Yes.
Wasn't that Fishtails or whatever that
Yeah.
weird Disney one?
No, I think there was a Splash Part 2, but it was made like in the 90s.
I think there was, yeah.
I think there was.
2000s,
Yeah.
aughts.
I'm going to look
I
at
remember
it.
when everyone said that they were going to redo it with Channing Tatum as the mermaid.
Ugh. Well,
I'd watch
if he's
that.
half naked, I might be
Yeah,
interested.
I'd watch
I
that.
might be interested.
Even
His
if
neck
it's
is too
awful,
thick
I'd
for
watch
me.
that.
His neck is too thick
I
for
don't
you?
like a thick neck like that. He's got a thick old neck.
You know what they say about a thick neck?
When that
Hard to
torso,
find scarves.
Yeah.
when that waist and torso and those hips start moving, I'm not looking at his neck.
Nobody is looking at. Well, not that neck. Anyway, that is bam, 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 bam. All right, that is it for us. We're gonna get out of here. We didn't ask. Is this get the Filmspringa passport or no, Jonesy? No.
She said it
No.
earlier. She said it's
She
not
said
worth
no.
seeing.
I disagree. I think it should
I'm
be,
sorry,
but,
but
oh well.
and also, guys, you know what? It's hard for me to put aside the whole Roman Polanski thing.
Yeah,
So,
I know. Yeah.
It was
I
hard
think
for my
it's
dad
out
too
there.
when he ruined my career. So yeah.
Well, you know what?
There you
I think
go.
your dad is a good dad.
You could have been a star. But you can follow us on
My
Instagram.
daughter, my sister, my daughter.
But you can follow us on Instagram at Filmspringa. You can email us at filmspringapodcast@gmail. You can watch us every Friday night on Out at TV at 8 p.m. if you miss our live show on YouTube. Go follow, subscribe, do all of that good stuff. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts because it helps us out a lot. And you guys
Send any hate mail to Gina Loans at
There you
Do that to yourself.
don't do that to
please.
yourself.
Don't
Don't
say yourself. I don't like to see it.
All right, you guys, we're out of here, and we will see you next week with a fish called Wanda.